Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. And in this update, we are going to check out Algorand's price chart because something really interesting in my view is going on in here, and it may not be, at least by the looks of it, necessarily what you think it actually is. So, are you ready? Let's dive in and see what is going on. And if you remember, the last time that we talked about Algo, I think we were right around this area, and the idea was that this move down might actually continue a little bit more, and in it we may very well take the lowest low down here, but then one way or the other in Algo, I do believe on a move on the upside. Why? Because in my view back then, this seemed a hell of a lot like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave impulsive structure down, and the idea was that maybe this is our wave 4 and like another move down into wave 5, or maybe this is going to be the end of our wave 4 followed by another move on the downside into wave 5. One way or the other, since we were very much close to the end of this 5 wave on the downside, well, okay, what's gonna happen after a 5 wave down? You know what? We are going to have one way or the other, even if you want to be like really pessimistic, a move on the upside. Hence why we said, okay, in Algo, some sort of a bounce in the next couple of days will make perfect sense. And what happened? As you can see, we clearly got our bounce. However, this is not necessarily what I expected. Why is that? First things first, before I tell you what is happening in this area and why on the cover this looks great, but it may not be necessarily an optimistic sign, let's go around here and tell you something very important. You see, my field of works is Elliott waves, and if you want to argue that we're gonna have our final low around here, then okay, you need to be able to find off of the lowest low in this region a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave. This specific structure is called an impulsive movement. Rules for it are we should not have overlapping of the waves between wave 2 and 4, and in any kind of 5 wave. Wave 3 is just not allowed to be the smallest wave. This is actually a big no-no in Elliott waves. And for our sub waves, let's change the colors. Okay, if you are a regular viewer, you probably know what I'm about to say. We must be able to find 5 up into wave 1, 3, and 5. And for wave 2 and 4, we can have different scenarios, doesn't really matter. ABC into 4, let's say, and like a WXY into wave 2. Now let's go on the live chart. So here's the situation. There are in this area two very important issues. One is actually a bit less important. But before we get into all that, let's zoom in more and count some waves. So I think we can safely assume this structure on the upside to be a 5 wave. Also in here, we can have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a very clear one. And starting from this point, this is probably a 1, 2, and then like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna say probably to about here into wave 3, another move down into wave 4, followed by a decent bounce into our wave 5. So essentially you are having 3 sets of 5 waves, and as you can see, between our pullbacks down in here and also here, we really do not actually have overlapping of the waves. So you might think, well, okay, this is a recipe for a beautiful looking 5 wave on the upside, which indicates, you know what, the final low in Algorand is already in, right? But you see, this actually comes back to what I said earlier. On the cover, this looks fantastic. However, there are 2 problems. Number 1, which isn't necessarily a huge problem, I can actually completely ignore that, is the fact that when you go on some other charts, or just put the chart on regular scale, okay, you realize that this wave 3 by like the smallest margin is actually smaller than our wave 1, meaning wave 3 is the smallest wave, which, like we said earlier, is kind of not allowed. For example, on this chart, which is from TradingView, as you can see, wave 3 is actually a little bit bigger than wave 1, so you can very much make the argument that we are looking fine, and this is actually a 5 wave. And I'm going to actually agree with you on that one. Let's say this is a 5 wave, and that unfortunately leads me to problem number 2. You see, even if you want to interpret this structure as an impulse, even at that point, you do have a very important issue, and it actually comes down to the previous move right in here. Why? Because let's go on 5-minute time frame, and in my own time, I rarely go on such lower time frames, but you know, this actually has a lot of very important insights on Elliott wave. So I do think for the sake of educational purposes, it's actually fine to go on these time frames. So question, how exactly are you able to find a 5 wave down starting from this high and ending to about this point? Are you going to say, I don't know, maybe like this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave down? If you want to say that, then okay, I think we can all safely agree that this is definitely overlapping of the waves between our pullbacks up, and this narrows your option to either an expanding ending diagonal or maybe an ending diagonal in form of a wedge, right? Well, let's measure some waves and see which scenario is happening. Let's measure our correction up in here, there we go, and compare it to this wave. As you can see, by like a very, very small margin, this is a little bit bigger than our supposedly wave 2. On the other hand, let's also measure this move down from here to about this point and compare it to our supposedly wave 3. As you can see, our wave 1 is actually smaller than wave 3. However, there are some important issues in here. Number one, in our supposedly wave 3, are you going to say that this is an ABC zigzag? Because in an expanding ending diagonal, you need to be able to find for every single wave ABC zigzags, right? And well, based on what we are having in here, so far we are on the right track. The problem is having a 5 wave in here into our supposedly wave 5 is more likely, and also into our wave 1, we are definitely, I would say, having like a beautiful clear cut impulsive structure on the downside. So for the reasons that we talked about, I'm thinking about having something else going on in here, and this actually narrows my option to a rather beautiful 5 wave down into a correction, not to about here, but actually to about this point into wave B, and another 5 wave down into our C leg. And you probably know what I'm about to say. You see, in Algorand, I want to, as my primary case, talk about the idea of having an ABC expanded flat, which looks like this. This is our initial move up into A, correction down into B, which and we're going to take this initial low, and then another rather strong move up into C. And in here, we are absolutely going to take the height of our A leg. And for our sub waves, you know it, ABC up into A, ABC, or maybe a WXY down into wave B. Honestly, from my POV, doesn't really matter a whole lot, and a very strong impulse up into C. And let's go on the live chart and see what is going on. And I fully believe this is actually, excuse me, starting from this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave into A, correction for wave B, another move up into C. And since we said this seems to be also an ABC, this time on the downside, and then, okay, let's even consider this move up as a 5 wave. Well, okay, this is suggesting that on a higher degree, this whole move is actually an ABC flat, meaning what? Unfortunately, our move down in Algorand is just not over yet, and this is actually going to continue for quite some time. This, in my view, should be my primary case. And again, at first glance, it really seems like that the low is already in, but I honestly do not think so, especially since in here we are absolutely able to find a beautiful 5 wave on the downside, meaning who knows, maybe this is just the beginning of a new move down. Now, in terms of overall structures, what are we going to have in here? Before we get into that, let me tell you that in case that you are interested in classic patterns, honestly, I'm not really a big fan of them, but if you are interested, well, I believe a lot of people soon are going to say, look, in Algo, we are having a bit of a bearish head and shoulder. And if this is going to happen, the target for it is going to be, yep, somewhere around the 22 cents area. And in that phase down, if we are going to get it, there's actually a very good chance that we may even take the lows down here about 22.5 cents. So again, if you are interested in classic patterns, all eyes on this beautiful, rather head and shoulder structure. Now, back to our Elliott wave conversation. I'm thinking this is definitely a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wave on the downside, something like this. Now I'm going to say actually to about this point, followed by an ABC flat up. And according to this count, we can have two different scenarios. Number one, you can have on a higher degree a 1, 2, meaning what's next? Yes, you guessed it right. Big move down into wave 3, 4, 5. And again, in it, we are going to take the lows down here. The other count suggests instead of having a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are actually the sub waves for an A, B, C zigzag. And once more, even this scenario suggests our move down in Algo is going to continue. And that's why in the short term, I want to argue, look, you need to be a little bit more patient and also careful at the same time, and do not be like overwhelmingly optimistic. Okay, it's very, very important to understand that. And also it's very important to understand that even if we go down and take the lows, overall we are still going to remain 1000% bullish in Algorand. Why? Because I actually do think that off of the lowest low we are having a 1 2 3 4 5 wave up, excuse me, let's just adjust the waves, and followed by that this whole move down is a correction structure, and after our correction is over, which in it, like we said earlier, we may very well go down and take the lows, but after it's over, what are we going to get? Probably another fantastic move up, because this structure indicates that on a higher degree, this is 1, this is 2, and what's next? A strong bull run into wave 3 and 4 and 5, and you are going to see some beautiful, beautiful price action in here. But before we get into all that, we may actually go down a little bit more and really upset a lot of short-term traders that went long in here in hope that we get right away, starting from the current point, a very strong move on the upside. That usually is how the market reacts. So overall in Algo, we are looking great, but in the short term, maybe not so much. And I hope I explained everything well and you understood what is going on in Algorand's price chart. Anyway, if you found any value in my content, I would really appreciate if you like this video and consider subscribing to my channel and follow me on Twitter. And if you want more, maybe you want a complete analysis for your own specific crypto, or maybe you want to learn some decent TA in order to be able to make good money in the markets, you can become a member and ask me anything you want. And until the next update, I hope you have a wonderful time with your family and loved ones. Goodbye.